It seems like every day another smart city project is announced to build a 21st century utopia ready for you to move in 20 years or so. It's just too bad that most of them end up as disastrous as the Forest City in Malaysia. Let's take a trip back to 2006. This is when one of the most ambitious projects of the 21st century was announced. A project that could save the world, revitalize the economy of Malaysia, and reimagine the concept of a city forever. That project was the one and only Forest City. Specifically, this city would be a true ecological and economic paradise. It's an integrated residential development stationed on the gorgeous slopes of Gelang Patah in the state of Johor, Malaysia. The city would be constructed on 1,370 hectares of gorgeous Malaysian land, a true paradise. Country Garden Holding and the Johor People's Infrastructure Group were tasked with bringing a true 21st century utopia to life. The city would be made up of 4 man-made islands. The buildings would be matching white skyscrapers that would all feature lush greenery growing up the sides and on the roofs to offset the pollution. This coincides with a rising trend known as green architecture, which looks to create sustainable, environmentally friendly urban environments that also happen to be beautiful to look at as well. Forest City looked to be the true poster child of this trend, with their gorgeous green structures merging flawlessly with the palm trees, beaches, and lush gardens that flow throughout the city. As far as reducing the carbon footprint goes, Forest City's plans were ambitious in this regard as well. The plan was for a giant system of interconnected railways for easy-to-use, affordable public transport. They also planned on using a variety of electric water taxis to take people between the islands. Any way of cutting down the need for carbon-burning vehicles is the best way of making a greener metropolis. A city this beautiful and sustainable would no doubt prove to the rest of the world that we really can have our modern urban lifestyle while living in healthy communion with nature. What development project could possibly be better than that? Of course, this being a massive urban development project that would cost more than $4 billion, the motivation here isn't just environmental. It was also intended to be a hub for economic advancement in the area. The entire project was brought about with the idea to target upper middle class Chinese citizens who wanted a place to spend their wealth abroad. It was supposed to offer relatively cheap seafront property not far from hubs like Shanghai and Singapore. Plans for the city were to have a population of well over 700,000 in just a decade, with a sizable chunk of this population being young, affluent locals who would make it into the next great hotspot in the area. Then it would get international attention, become a hub for tourism, and become an eco-friendly 21st century boomtown. They made all the right choices for this exact sort of development. That includes 5-star hotels, world-renowned golf courses, excellent shopping opportunities, and plenty of options for fine dining. This city would be one eco-friendly version of Disney World away from being the greatest center for economic development in the world. Only there's little chance Disney would ever consider investing into what the city inevitably became. By now, you've likely done the math and realized we're only a few years away from 2026. Why haven't I heard of this super awesome, totally green city? Well, that's because the dream of Forest City doesn't match the reality at all. Not so far, anyway. Pretty much all of the progress this project promised did not come to pass. It has been described as many things, including a massive boondoggle, a ghost town, and the most useless city in the world. All of that is a far cry from the hopes for a massive population of young, hip citizens who give the rest of the world enough FOMO to make them travel to the island and drop a ton of cash everywhere they go. So what exactly happened? Well, for starters, currency controls of around $50,000 for Chinese buyers to spend outside of the country instituted by the government severely hurt the strong early sales. The city was then plagued by setbacks and controversies left and right, such as a violation of a 2005 International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea-mediated agreements with Singapore over the creation of reclaimed islands that caused a small international incident. Then there were massive safety concerns such as cracks appearing in the quickly constructed roads and hotels. Evidently, the rushed land reclamation did not allow proper time for the soil to stabilize. The land itself was reportedly sinking with a strong likelihood that it would continue to do so. The controversies have piled up, including many local corruption charges, harsh relations between Malaysia and China, the hiring of low-wage workers from South Asia, and the COVID-19 pandemic, which sent sales down over 90%. Today, roughly 15,000 units of the planned 700,000 have been sold. Estimates showed that less than 500 people may actually live there full-time. Perhaps the biggest disappointment with Forest City is how it failed to do the one thing that it promised to do: build a green city. In fact, not only is the city not the green utopia of the future it promised to be, but it has done irreconcilable damage to the local ecosystem, costing the area's wildlife and human inhabitants more than any city could ever hope to replace. When they initially announced the 20-year project to build their eco-paradise, they didn't exactly focus on what would have to happen in order to build this kind of city. You see, the area Forest City was set to be constructed in was designated as an environmentally sensitive area, otherwise known as ESA, Rank 1 area. That means that no development is allowed without a series of procedures. These exist to protect some of the finest examples of natural splendor in Malaysia. That includes the gorgeous Tanjung Kupang intertidal seagrass meadow. It is the largest in all of Malaysia. Then there's the Pulai River Mangrove Forest Reserve. It has been designated as a wetland of international importance. So any eco-friendly development should be concerned not just with creating a greener city, but preserving the nature all around it. That has not happened at all. For starters, the project reclaimed several man-made islands using the same process the World and Palm Islands used to create their artificial islands. This process severely damaged the local wetlands and mangrove swamps. This severely damaged the population of fish in the area as well, in ways that are likely irreversible. This caused massive problems for not just the sea life, but those that depended on it to survive. The local villagers depend heavily on fishing for their livelihood. The reclaimed man-made islands depleted the local fish so much that the villagers found themselves struggling for survival. They then took their complaints to Johor State, hoping to stop any further damage to their fishing grounds. Nothing was done, and the project continued along despite the environmental toll. In fact, this was an illegal action. They were supposed to get a legally required detailed environmental impact assessment, otherwise known as DEIA, before altering the local ecosystem in such a drastic way, in order to prevent this exact problem. Instead, the project sidestepped this entirely despite the irreversible consequences. This problem obviously didn't just go away, and the pressure continued to mount for authorities to look into it. In 2015, the DEIA was finally undertaken after a great deal of damage had already been done. The findings were even worse than expected. It confirmed the obvious that many regulations had been completely ignored. That wasn't the big hit to the project, though. The report showed that in order to keep from damaging the environment further, the project would have to be greatly reduced, by more than half. More specifically, they would have to scale down from 1,600 hectares to less than 405. Experts have detailed the permanent impact on the local seagrass, water hydrology, and mangroves on top of the local fish population. Now local villagers walk along beaches with buckets that used to fill with crabs, shells, and other essentials for their survival. Every day those buckets are filled with less and less. And there's no doubt that the more successful the nearby urban and likely destructive environment is, the less those buckets will be filled. If that isn't a complete failure to live up to the project's ideals, I don't know what is. By 2050, it's still possible that Forest City could be the hub of commerce and green living it hoped to be, or it could continue its journey towards becoming one of the 21st century's most famous ghost towns. If you want to see a green city that actually works, evidently Vienna, Austria is the greenest city in the world, and it's not sinking into the ocean.